Here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go. It is Markets in the Morning. Let's go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Welcome to Markets in the Morning. Today is Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. This is Markets in the Morning, where we take a look at the price action of the cryptocurrency market, including the Bitcoin price chart, along with the altcoin market. Of course, we got some stuff to talk about with XRP as we get ready for the United States stock market to open up here in the next 2 minutes. Looks like we do have indexes slightly in the green, coming off of a positive CPI reading. Inflation came in slightly cooler than anticipated on this reading. So we're getting a reaction on markets here after, of course, it's been just red city over there in the equity markets. After we go through that, of course, we'll look at things like the dollar, US dollar currency index, 103 out of that historical danger zone. And then we'll look at precious metals, gold, silver, any type of financial news, any type of crypto news going on out there in the universe. We usually get through that pretty quick. And then, of course, I hang out with you guys in the chat until we wrap it up after about an hour. So things going on out there in the market. Obviously, this morning we've got a little bit of a pop. Bitcoin hit down there to 76,500 2 days ago. Bounced up about $7,000. It's currently kind of hovering right at it underneath its 200-day moving average. So still just kind of humming along in there. We'll look at that a little bit closer. XRP, swished down during that moment, went underneath that $1.95, popped up, sitting at about $2.22 right now. So we'll have stuff to talk about with XRP. Russell 2000, it's down there at those support levels of where it was resistance for a couple of years. Now it's back on it. It's also where the 200-week moving average is. So it's like at the same spot. So we'll look at all of that stuff. And well, we got a lot to dive into. First things first, we'll talk here about Bitcoin, what's going on over in here. Obviously, you can see there's been a nice little pop happening here off of these lows. I really thought we'd get down to like 76.2, 76.1, and we got within $300 to $400 of it, and it ricocheted $7,000 off that low. So part of me is like, okay, we'll see if there's still some more trickery to come out of Bitcoin in here, but I think we're as close as you could possibly be to if the bottom is formed, and I think we'll kind of look at that by looking at XRP and kind of like what my thoughts are on what I see happening over there. But I think this thing's probably closer to being completed than obviously starting. And of course, when you get down here is where everybody's screaming, the equity markets are dying. Everything is game over. It always happens after the falls have already happened. But we're looking for, of course, things to now try to turn their way around over here. So, over here, like there was a lot of reactions over here on the fib levels. I showed this in the video yesterday that we had the same thing happen with the market back in 2022. And that actually how you precisely were able to get the bottom of the altcoin market. Similarly to that, it still is at 76.1. I don't know if it's going to end up getting it or not. But either way, I think we're just really close. The 50-week moving average comes in like right here at like 75,000. So we're really, really close if we're not already there. Looking at things like XRP, obviously the big picture still just being that, this is the story. This is where we're at. This little low flush right here, of course, adds some complication. I showed that with Cardano. Like we didn't get that with Cardano, but you're kind of in this kind of mixed moment where really the big thing that I want to see in here to like lay down my guard and start being like, I think we're all gravy, is if we see $2.50. And I'll kind of show you maybe the way I think I could imagine how we get there. And that is when like a lot of the guard would be laid down. But of course, I see a lot of stuff out there that, the thoughts are that we're going to go down and hit like $1 or $1.50 here on XRP. And obviously it's just clear as day. Like what are people, they're essentially thinking we're going to be doing this, right? Like this is where the next phase of this market comes in and that's where we're heading. And my argument is that we are actually way beyond that, that this moment actually it was this right in here. And what we've been doing all throughout here is just like we're just kind of humming along in here. And we're way past that. So this is what the big call is out there. And I think that's why it's so surprising to so many people that XRP has held up so well when most of this market has been just obliterated. And to kind of think of it that a lot of the phase that you've already seen happen in here, a lot of this stuff is really like you've already kind of gone through a lot of this, right? And that now you're back down at the lows, right? You're still just trying to churn along in here. And then, of course, that 1 hour wick is what adds those complications, because still try to ignore it because of Trump. But, you know, that you're already way long in here, and that you're actually much further. And the way that I to view it is like if you were here back in 2021. As you know, 90% of the cryptocurrency market topped in April and May of 2021. However, a couple of assets were able to continue and set new highs there in November, right? Bitcoin and Ethereum. But most cryptos were not capable of setting a new high when it came time over here in like November of 2021, right? This would be like May of 2021, Elon Musk on Saturday Night Live. November of 2021, Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, goes on to CNBC and tells everybody to add Bitcoin and Ethereum to their portfolio, right? And so you got a lot of people thinking, you know, we still have a big flush to come in here for XRP. And my argument is that it's more along the lines of that this dynamic has already played itself out in here. And a way to view that is just kind of like if we add, you'll see it. If it decides to load. Let's add another one, see if we can get it. Binance, do you want to work? We're live, TradingView. Come on. Anyway, whenever it decides that it wants to load in here, that most of the market peaked back here in December, right? This is a unique situation over here for XRP to be able to do that. Can I do this on another screen? Yes. Okay. Have you loaded yet? No. All right. You're going to deal with technical difficulties here for just a second. Right. Back to what we're talking about, that this has already happened, right? And that you're much further along. And so a lot of people looking for this thing to happen. My argument is we've already done something like that. And that you could see that dynamic actually here when you like look at things like Cardano in here, that dynamic already happened. And that the little push that we've already had, right? So like here. There you go. Right. And that, right. You see all the faces in here, right? You see this in Cardano, right? And there's your flush, there's your flush, there's your Wyckoff, there's your big fake break, right? There's your fake break, and then now you pull them back down, right? And that has already happened over here on XRP. So all the dollar stuff, the $1.50 stuff, I genuinely believe people are just saying, hey, we got that thing coming. And my argument is that we're actually further along than that, and that XRP sustained much stronger strength through this whole moment than the rest of the market did during all of this. And that, you know, we're talking about how even $2 and if we saw like $2.50, it would open up the world of, you know, laying down the guard and feeling like you've kind of weathered the storm happening in here. And, you know, I brought this up in yesterday's video, that idea in here, like it's similar to like getting in here, right? Like this is the breakdown. You've gotten yourself back up in here. It's like $2.50. And I said, you know, hey, it still wouldn't make sense even if you pulled back down and you still got down to like $2.20. It still wouldn't be that big of a deal. But just showing that type of strength happening in there would likely insinuate that that was the actual low. And a way to even look at that in there is you actually have the same thing happening down in here as well. Once it comes back and it slams back down into this low, that, you know, you could still end up working out this area for quite some time underneath this breakdown in here, right? But get out. $2.50 probably pulls back down into the 220s again. And then, hey, you know what? Let's go do this thing all over again. And then finally, you know, be able to work our way out. So I get it when prices are down, everybody's scared, looking at stock market, screaming tariffs, screaming everything. And, you could sit here and talk for 2 years about a rotational top happening in the equity market and that the equities are overheated in the tech sector. And, it just takes prices falling for everybody to start screaming. But, I'm still sticking with it that, yeah, it's probably going to end up being that tech is going to top first. S&P is going to top first. Dow is going to top first. But then for a breadth and a broadening to happen throughout the market. Right? You hear a lot of people being like, short Wall Street. What's that guy's name? He's really annoying. I don't know. He posted on Twitter, short Wall Street, long Main Street or something. I don't know. But I think of it in that manner of it's like, it's super consolidated. It broadens out. It's most of the market, a better economy, right? And when there's an optimism of a better economy for a lot, then it's not so consolidated into the big mega caps, but it broadens out into the rest of the market. And so that's what we're looking for, obviously, in the Russell 2000 is to see something like that be able to emerge and that there is some type of breadth opening that happens out in there. And I think it will come. But right now it's one of these things. I think probably a couple of days in here of waddling around in here. And Bitcoin, that's a tricky story too on if that was the low, if it's going to hang out in here. We've come down to this 200-day moving average multiple times. A lot of times what happens is we'll kind of get underneath of it. It doesn't have like a big bearing on it if you're underneath it, but it could be resistance here for several days, right? And then get out and then be resistance for several days and then eventually get out. It's more that like whenever we cross below the 50-week moving average, that's historically where bigger problems have happened throughout the history of the market, right? That's where we start to say, hey, look, there's never been a time in history where we've gone below the 50-week moving average, closed below it, right? So like if we go shattering through in here, right? And we close a weekly candle down in here, we have no history to go off of to say that's okay, right? As long as we're on top of it, everything historically has been fine, right? Going below it, we don't really have any historical references to go back to and say things that will be okay, but we're not there right now, right? So this is the one that's the big deal. That when it comes to things like the 200-day moving average, we can kind of go underneath it all the time, and really the whole ride up here. The last 2 times we've gone underneath it, as you can see in here. So it's not like an earth-shattering thing to go underneath it, but we can consistently see like each time we go under it, it kind of becomes a resistance here for a little while until it shatters back through. The last time it went through it a couple of times. So we'll see, but that's kind of where the struggle point is at right now. Obviously, you could see it right in there. And we'll see if it has to hit that 50-week moving average or if it does have to hit that 76.2, approximately 76.1. We'll see in the coming days. But like for things like XRP, this is kind of my thoughts in here. And I don't really talk about trade setups on here because everybody wants a trade call. They want someone else to make the call so they can blame someone if they take a trade and it doesn't go their way. But like the way I do view this is being like, you can de-risking right here, waiting for prices to break out. And then if they get through here, then you're safe. It seems, okay, can't say you're safe, but it seems safer, right? And then a back test could be a re-entry, right? Or protecting against any type of downside at these levels. That's historically how things happen underneath these resistances right here to let it be able to breathe. So we'll see. But I'm feeling good about it. And I think we are a lot further than what most people think we are. I think XRP has just been the absolute strongest, and that's why it gets attacked the most. But that, this give you kind of an idea. This is the idea of why you see so many calls for $1 and $1.50, even though people won't say it. I see it all the time. I see so many calls for so many things, and I'm like, dude, I know exactly what you're calling. This is the call. I think we're way beyond it. And I think it has already happened in the market in here. And you could see that by looking at how the rest of the market responded for the last couple of months, and think of it in the lens of XRP has been like what Bitcoin was like back in May of 2021 versus November of 2021. And that this is the market dynamic that has already happened in here. And this is how XRP did during all of that. And that we've already seen that happen in the market. Those are my thoughts. All right, moving along. Yep. all that stuff in there. Same thing goes with total 3. So I think the thing is going to be the same thing over here on total 3. So you can see this is going to be the resistance level, right? This is the high from back here. And this is interesting too, because a lot of times you do see that level get tested. Oh, it has tested it. Okay, cool. It's the same kind of idea in here, that it would probably do this waddling thing in here. Then what do you look for? You look for it to get back to 843 and then probably back test that level right here. Like I would, like, right now I'm talking and I'm being like, maybe that's the bottom. It's really close. If it's not, it's like $300 shorter, or it's like at that 50-week moving average, which is like $1,000 shorter. If we saw that, if you saw XRP go to like 250, and if you saw like total 3 get right there, my thoughts would be like, yep, that was definitely bottom. We're probably pulling back in here. We're probably going to retest that, but that was bottom. Right. And so that's the kind of the things we're waiting on right now is how long is this going to take to happen in here? Is this going to test here again, or is it going to stop right there? And then once it gets out, and as long as it gets right up in here to like 835, that'll be it. Be like, all right, yeah, we're good, done. And if not, we're talking just minuscule more amounts. But I think, the things that we're also witnessing throughout the market dynamic in here with how some things are very strong. XRP, again, I can't reiterate that enough. The XRP community has been the one that has reaped all the rewards this cycle around. It has been astonishing to watch how weak Ethereum has been. Questionable on whether or not Ethereum's even going to be able to get into an all-time high at this point with how it's behaving. That when things turn up, which I do believe they will turn up, we're going to feel very, very confident. It's going to be very similar to 2021. A handful of winners, and most things are just retracements. And that's just what it's going to end up being. One of them that I think will be a winner, not just XRP. I stand by it. I think Cardano. Hard to say on everything else, but I think Cardano will be a winner as well. And even looking at it through this lens of even how Cardano's been acting in here, that, there's probably still more consolidation to happen through here. Timing is so hard to predict. I know you guys want it more than anything. You don't care about if XRP is only going to $5, but you would like to know if it's happening in 4 days from right now, right? That's all you care about. That we could consolidate here and it could last months. I don't know. If you moved at that same velocity, yeah, that would be months more consolidating in here. If you moved at that velocity, it's not, right? So it's real hard to guess on how long it's going to end up taking for things to get going in here. But I do think Cardano will be a winner along with it and structurally playing along to the tune of it. And I think some cards were shown with the post by Trump saying XRP, Cardano, and Solana. My 2 biggest bags are XRP and Cardano. Solana is like one of my smallest bags. It's so small you could almost say I don't own any Solana. That's how small it is. If Solana went to 0, I literally wouldn't feel it. It would, okay, lunch money style stuff, right? But I think probably the cards were revealed in some way. I do think David Sachs is gaslighting. I think he should be called out on that. I think somebody important should do it. John Deaton held a space the day that thing happened. There was no misinterpreting what had occurred. Even Patrick Bet David, right? Is that his name? Just put out a video all talking about it, right? There's no misinterpreting that. It's very clear. The president tweeted crypto strategic reserve with XRP, Solana, and Cardano. Hours later, comes out and says, oh, don't worry. Yeah, Bitcoin and Ethereum too. David Sachs tries to gaslight it and says, oh, he just named the top 5 assets. That's not what happened. He tweeted XRP, Solana, and Cardano. And then hours later said, oh, yeah, also Bitcoin and Ethereum. It was not you're reading too much into it. He just named the top 5. No, he didn't. He wrote a post. He said XRP, Cardano, and Solana. That was the post. Those are not the top 5 assets, right? Hours later, he comes out and says Bitcoin and Ethereum, don't worry, you're going to be okay. But, I think the gaslighting should be called out by somebody big. He shouldn't just hang out in his little echo chamber where he gets friendly softballs tossed at him. that should be addressed. And it should be addressed that they're not even the top 5. I think the crypto community can be understanding of things of being like, we probably shouldn't have done that because it would have created some type of competitive advantage for certain assets and a disadvantage for other assets. And we realized we didn't want to intervene in the market and create some type of competitive advantage in the market. And so we changed our mind on doing that. Okay, fair enough. I can absolutely accept that. Gaslighting, no. Right? So somebody call it out. Yeah. All right, moving on. Russell 2000, right? So Russell 2000, of course, is right back here at the Wyckoff, top of range, back in the sign of strength. We're still hanging here. Here's your 200-week moving average. It's still just chilling in here. There's 2 more days until this weekly candle closes. Russell closed green yesterday. Finally, we had a green day yesterday. Of course, with CPI beating expectations today, we got a little bit of green action happening over in here. Nothing too convincing of like a reversal happening just yet. Of course, everybody's eyes are over here on the Dow Jones Industrial Average, while you do have your first lower low happening over here on the weekly time frame. So things looking like they're starting to show the weakness and getting somewhat of a rollover happening over here in the Dow. Of course, biggest contributors to this, right? Your things like United Healthcare, which we've talked about that. United Health, it'll be the weirdest thing in the world. If that is what marked the top, because we talked about it for like a year, something with United Health is going to be it. Unfortunately, not expecting something like that by any means. But Apple, I think, has set a new low. Apple is, of course, in lots of mutual funds, indexes, everything. So Apple goes, it creates a lot of scare happening over in there. The thing is, of course, if people see red lines, we have PTSD of what happened during C19, right? A lot of times it's a lot of rolling action that happens in there, or things can just draw out for a long time. They can go down, you can come back in 702 retrace, come down, 702 retrace and come down, and it can be rolling. And that, there can be rotations that happen in moments like this. But we are all PTSD'd from C19's event, right? I just don't think we'll see an event like this. This was unique, right? This is what we call the double tap, bull flag, breakout, short squeeze, violent backtest of massive liquidations happening in there. I don't think we'll see an event like that, but I think, I've tried to call the top of the Dow so many thousands of times at this point. Like, I'm just like, humility, humbleness of doing it. But yeah, you finally have your first lower low happening over in here. And typically lower lows start to show weakness and rolling over. One example of where it's still, I saw an example in here, right? Like, here's a lower low and then it just wobbles around in here, right? So like, you'd be saying, oh no, it's game over. We're definitely done. We're doomed. And then things just waddle around. I don't think we're going to do that. But just because we're heading down doesn't mean it automatically goes in a straight line down. I think it's going to be sloppy. That's my guess, is that it's going to be sloppy in here. But there's certainly weakness emerging happening here in the indexes. This is the weekly time frame. We're going to move over here to the monthly time frame happening in here. Not a whole lot to say monthly wise, but weekly time frame, you can kind of start to see it in here. So we'll see if anything convincing shows up in here, but I would still expect there's going to be some kind of bounce that emerges in here. All right. DXY, US dollar currency index, gets down to 103.7. Finally, of course, we haven't seen reaction in stocks yet, but we're down there. As for silver and gold sits at 2,915. Not a big change happening over in there. Silver, the bigger one. Silver is now above $33. Still range bound though. Nothing to run and tell mom about just yet. One of the interesting things over here, there's your silver. I've been looking at this. If you've been watching the channel since 2019, I do believe I brought this up in 2019. If not 2019, then definitely early 2020. If we measure the Dow Jones Industrial Average in silver rather than gold, oh boy, it looks, the whole run up in 2017 and 18 was nothing more than a 702 retracement in our money. We've watched this for years. And boy, it's just teetering right on the edge of getting ready for a breakdown happening in here in the Dow Jones versus silver. Question is, will that be a massive plunge happening in the Dow, or will that be a massive surge happening in silver, or both, right? The thing is, a lot, what we do, we usually double tap. This thing sure looks like it's ready to break, but the thing is, I see these all the time, and let's see if we see it in here. Right, like this, right? Like what's going on here. What do? You usually, right? You'll double tap, but then there's usually that. Just like even over here on Cardano, you can see it, right? There's usually going to be that before a break actually ends up happening. So while it looks like it's ready to go kerplunk in there, a lot of times what will happen is, no, not just yet, now. And so how long could that last, right? Could that last months? Could that last weeks? Could that last a whole year? I don't know. But it sure looks like eventually that massive outperformance of silver versus the Dow is going to eventually come. You guys know how my bets are placed. Big allocation to silver. Very tiny allocation to stocks. I don't even say, like, whenever I'm talking about like net worth and how I'm distributed between like cash and metals and crypto, I don't even say the stock stuff because it's like 1%, and it's a mix of things. There's short positions in those stocks. There's long positions. I bet if I went through what was short and what was long, they would equal out to being break even essentially. So I've placed, I'm not betting on the Dow. I am betting on silver to be the winner in here. Like, and just because this is going down, it doesn't necessarily mean that the Dow is going to go kerplunk. This ratio of Dow to silver could do that simply by silver having a blast out. And so I do think silver is going to have a blast out. So it doesn't necessarily mean in that event right there means that the Dow dies. It could just be silver having a massive explosion happening in there. But that's been a long waiting game, and we've been talking about that for years. This is 5 years of data right here. What kind of, just do it like that. 5 years. One day it will come. I hope. All right. Next week, we got Fed meeting next week. Likely to be boring. Even with all this stock action, absolutely nothing has happened in regards to any type of changes to the federal funds rate. Still expected to be a pause. So we'll get together next Wednesday. We'll have markets in the morning, and then we'll end up having the Fed live stream. I think everybody's just wondering, when are you going to stop QT? I don't know. One thing, again, like the thing that's been interesting is there's been a lot of change in rates. Like, let's see here. Like, you could see the 1-year rate has fallen here since the last Fed meeting. Like, it's gone down like about a quarter of a point. The 10-year, it's gone down like a quarter of a point. But still, it's been that 2-month one. Like, that 2-month yield has been the one to like kind of tell you what's the Fed going to do. This one just remains unbudged. And we keep seeing that this one's kind of in the leader of whatever this thing is going to end up saying. So as long as this 2-month yield just stays still and this thing predicts the 97% probability that there'll be no cut, that's just what we'll see. So we'll see between now and markets in the morning and next week on whether or not that thing ends up plunging. And if it does, cool, I guess. I don't know. But that'd probably give us an idea of what the Fed plans on doing. As of right now, no change at all. As for stocks today, leaders are Tesla. Tesla's been getting slammed a lot. Nvidia's been getting slammed a lot. They're having bounces, right? These plus 6%. Of course, these are coming off of massive hits happening in there. Apple set its first daily low happening over in here. Still range bound, but to take notice that it did actually set a daily low after a retracement in what looks like an ABC retracement happening in here. And I just think this big tech stuff is massively over allocated. It's probably an unwinding happening in here, and that whole short Wall Street, long Main Street is probably going to end up being broadening out happening in markets. So, all right. There you go. That'll be next week. As for news, inflation rate hits 2.8% in February, less than expected. So inflation, 2.8%. I don't know how it's going to really get any better than that. And then Fed's not planning on cutting based on that CPI data, based on what the market has priced in. So no big stuff going on there. Weekly mortgage demand surges 11% higher as interest rates drop for the sixth consecutive week. Of course, when you see that 10-year yield, you see mortgage rates drop as well. Moving over to crypto news. European retaliatory tariffs threaten Bitcoin correction to 75K. Okay. We've hit 76K, but okay. It's just silly. It's just silly. I can quantifiably measure the price number that Bitcoin will hit based off the Europeans saying they're going to have retaliatory tariffs. Now, if they only say 10%, then we'll hit 75.5K. But if they say 22%, 75K for sure. But I'm off to a rough start on news, aren't I? Okay. Bitcoin whales hinted $80,000 market rebound as Binance inflows cool. It seems like prices are so volatile that even Cointelegraph can't keep up with what's going on out there. The Sandbox, Sebastian Borgen created the word influencer. Thorchain at crossroads, decentralization clashes with illicit activity. Yes, that's because the Bybit hackers washed all $1.4 billion of the Ethereum and sold it all on the market using Thorchain. Centralized data infrastructure violates Web3's core of decentralization. Investors flee from risk assets as JP Morgan ups recession odds to 40%, right? It's just like looking at the discussions we've had. Where's gold? I don't have gold. It used to be on here, right? These things, these moves in gold and stuff like that, and these big breakouts and these big bull runs, right? This is what happens when tops are forming, right? When you have gold go on these bull runs, crypto bros just love to write these narratives that Bitcoin is like gold and they're somehow correlated and they do these things. They're totally different assets. These are usually precursors to recessions coming. I've written full newsletters about this. I've gone back through previous recessions. And these are, things. And that's why we talk about this in the terms of being a rotational equity top, because we're likely going through a topping process happening over there in the equity markets. The question is, how long is it going to take, right, for a recession to kick in? And then once we do see something happen, when it's like when we're talking about rotations happening in equity markets, we are not talking like a 1 year long rotation that happens. It's likely 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and then the whole thing goes kerplunk. That's just the state of where we're at. All right. Bitcoin, $70,000 retracement, part of macro correction in bull market. I can agree with that. Bitcoin miner clean spark to join S&P small cap 600 index. U.S. House follows Senate in passing resolution to kill IRS DeFi broker rule. Meteora says co-founder's X account was hacked after parasitic meme coin post. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's been a real interesting thing to observe too, is that a lot of time that I never knew that existed, which of course scares me, because if I ever got hacked one day, that, there's like there are influencers who get paid to pretend that they got hacked, but then they tweet out the meme coin addresses and all that stuff and everything like that on their thing for 24 hours, and then they get paid, and then they get their account restored back to them, and they just claim it's a hack. I didn't even know that was like a thing, which is crazy. So who knows, right? Claims it was a parasitic whatever it was, right? I don't know. All right, there you go. That's the state of the market. Let's go ahead and hop into the... Oh, no way. Hold on. My wife didn't even text me. We are 34 minutes in and I haven't played the frog. I'm so sorry. I'm just getting rustier and rustier as time goes on. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Wait. That's not okay. We need louder. Yeah, I gotta mute that. Okay. There we go.
It is Wednesday, my dude. It is Wednesday,
There we all go. All right, we're good. All right, we'll hop into the chat here for a little while, guys, and then we'll get on our way. There we go. All right. Jonas Fugawa says, hi, do you think the Tesla bottom is in? Man, Tesla is part of the Mag 7, right? If you catch a bounce on Tesla, great. I'm just not really into the Mag 7, guys. Like, retail's all consolidated into the same place. Once you guys all abandon ship on your NVIDIAs and your Teslas, your Microsofts, your Apples, and everything like that, that's where I think everything will kind of rotate around. But for me, I think all those things are going to pop. I think all of them are. And Tesla's, I don't know what's going on with Tesla in regards to, their sales are probably in massive decline. Like, look, I know people love stories. They love politics. I don't care about politics. And if you are assuming that I'm on your team or I'm on the opposite team, you're just wrong. And right, I try to remain as neutral as possible. If something like, if there's something positive for crypto or something negative for crypto, I'll voice it. Right? It doesn't mean anything outside of that. Right? Like, but you're having to have Elon Musk is having to have Trump push Teslas now. You saw that yesterday. He's obviously dealing with problems when it comes to sales and people like, all right, I'll just be straight. I've been critical of electric cars on here, man. Like, give me a gas guzzler. I don't care. Right? Like, here's the deal. I've been to China. I've been to Shenzhen, China. Okay. I've been to Shanghai. You would not care about paper straws. You would not care about saving the planet. You would not care about gas guzzling vehicles and you doing your part to save the world if you've been to these cities and seen the amount of pollution they're putting out. You sipping from your paper straws and couldn't do anything. So I think it's a lot of people who are like trying to be like, when it comes to the electric vehicles, thinking that they're like saving the planet or something like that. Which political side typically wants to kind of save the planet a little bit more or not. And so I don't think you're going to really tailor to the right side, the MAGA side with electric vehicles by Trump buying one. I think that still is the left side that wants to kind of save the planet and stuff like that. And so if the save the planet people are not buying Teslas because they're mad, because they're politically divided, I don't know. Is Tesla in trouble? Maybe. So, I don't know. Just Mag 7. He says, yeah, try Mumbai. I'm telling you, if you've seen the things I've seen, you wouldn't believe it. Like, I've even gone off into like the foothills, into like, off like miles outside of Shenzhen. And even when you're up in the middle of nature, miles away, it is just pure smog in the middle of nowhere, way out there. The pollution travels so far. You would never sip from a paper straw in your entire life or be tricked to think that driving an electrical vehicle is saving the planet if you saw it with your own eyes. I would YouTube. If you want to see it, just YouTube. Like smog in Shenzhen or pollution Shanghai and what it really looks like. It is like when you wake up in the morning and it's a foggy day outside, like that 24/7. But Jonas, I don't know. It just seems to be Tesla just seems to be continuously cutting through things. I think it'll catch a bounce. I just don't know how meaningful the bounce will be. Happiest little place in the galaxy. Member for 17 months. Thank you very much. Says old school. When moon, when Lambo. I don't know. Flagrantly obtuse. Member for 20 months says, I've been here since 2019. Has Bitcoin shown bearish divergence on his chart? I'm hoping HBAR performs well. What are your thoughts? Well, it's probably beginning to form bearish divergences because even if we're going up one more, it's going to happen on a bearish divergence. Like this would happen on a bearish divergence for sure if we got this move, because this is as high as this is as bullish as I can be for Bitcoin. Like that's as bullish as I can possibly be for Bitcoin. Best case scenario. That's the most bullish I can be. And again, this would make Bitcoiners infuriated, as we're talking about dropping way below that after, right? That's the most bullish I could possibly be for you for Bitcoin. So this would happen on a major bearish divergence in here to even get something like that, which would be like capital rotating out of here and shifting around, sloshing around throughout the rest of the market. As for HBAR, I'm not going to pull up a lot of stuff on here. This will be really the only one I'm pulling up on here because we have just so many things that are so weak. We could look at 1,000 different things. We're going to get a different picture everywhere in the market. But that's one of those ones I keep kind of looking at is HBAR that's interesting in here. HBAR, of course, is one of the Made in America things. Like this is obviously that gives you kind of a reference here on how different this market is. Chainlink's probably gotten lower than that by now to show you how different this market has been spread throughout here. Let's go to Binance. Binance has held right on top of this peak that was set back here in April of 2024. Now this peak, of course, is set by fake news, right? It was released by like the HBAR Foundation or something like that. They were saying that BlackRock was like jumping in to HBAR or something like that. But what it was like some company was tokenizing a BlackRock share of something on the Hedera network or something like that. It really was nothing. BlackRock had absolutely nothing to do with it. Again, one of those things, fake, right? Take it right back because it's fake. But what's interesting about this level for Hedera, to still give a glimmer of hope for the market in general, right, is like where Hedera is, right? It's on top of its previous all-time high. Even ignoring the fake pump, just where you are with Hedera. Again, you're on top of that high for the market cap, right? People don't like the idea of that. That's as far as I think we could possibly go for Hedera. And that, maybe it looks something along the lines of what we have seen happen in here before, right? That the correction we're witnessing, we're pretty progressed throughout it. And that's really kind of what it looked like back throughout here, right? And that you could look something along the lines of that. But that's about as far as probably end up going, right? So that's what, 3x from here, maybe? What's the price of Hedera? I don't know. $0.20. So it gets you to like 60 cents, something like that. I know that's way lower than what most people want, right? Y'all are going to go tag all your influencers online. Basically, thinks we only go to 20 cents. You guys know how, or 60 cents. You guys know how to do. It's all market caps. That's where the market cap's going. That's where I'll cut and run. Calvin, member for 2 months. My son Maverick and I watch your show every week. He says, more frog. Let's go. Here you go. I'll give you one more because I totally failed you at the beginning.
It is Wednesday, my dude. It is Wednesday. Dudes.
There we all go. Probably just heard the dog bust in. Okay. Maverick, thanks for watching, brother. Corey, have you checked XRP distribution graphs on sentiment? I could be wrong, but it seems like only 100K to 100 million wallets are selling and the others are accumulating. I haven't paid attention to that. I wouldn't be surprised if that, though. I wouldn't be surprised that, what is it? Like retail piles in when prices are a lot higher, right? So smaller wallets are going to be buying, bigger wallets are going to be selling right now. Big Merle, thanks for not releasing XRP all-time high video on 117. Yeah, I know, man. I mean, we worked on this thing for years. Trust me, I wanted to release it. Trust me, it's been a nightmare of sitting here being like, oh my gosh, am I going to get to release it? I just didn't, did not see a confirmed breakout happening just yet. And so I wasn't ready to do it. Yeah, he's talking about the movie. Because that would hurt 10 times more right now if I had released it and we would be right here. So it still sits in the back pocket, but it makes it, if we get the all-time high, it makes the release even more bittersweet. Because there's a scene in the movie that's this big dramatic scene. And of course, we've gone through a lot of drama lately with, Jack Maulers and all the stuff that makes you want to capitulate and all those the FUD and all that different things, and it'll fit right into the movie. Well, so Andrew Coslin, is XRP and Wyckoff distribution on the 4-hour time frame? So when you 4 hours, it's hard to do it like this, right? I don't believe it. I've already given my opinion on it, right? So I think it's probably going to waddle in here. But the thing if we get this break above it and get to 250, I think we're good. I think that's pretty much my thoughts. Chris Merrill, Ethereum from March of 2024 today looks like Wyckoff accumulation to me. Maybe XRP just went way early to make up for lost time. Yeah, I mean, even with Ethereum, I could look at it from the lens of being like, it's going through what Bitcoin went through during C19 right now, right? Like this whole last year and a half or year for Ethereum has been like what it was like for Bitcoin from June of 2019 till March of 2020, right? Which today, March 12th, by the way, I think is the anniversary of when everything absolutely hit the fan. March 13th. Right. Well, we were hitting the fan today. Yeah, March 12th, it was absolutely hitting the fan. It was brutal. And I was here during that. I actually went camping. I was actually camping. So I love it whenever people are like, oh, good, you're going to go on vacation. Prices are going to go up now. I'm like, oh, yeah? I was on vacation when that happened. Careful what you wish for. And I do have vacations planned out this summer. For those, I usually like to announce them when prices are a little bit higher, so people aren't like, oh, yeah, I announced it because prices are low. So once prices rebound, I'll tell you about the dates that I have. I'll be off in like May and June. But that's months from now, right? Sandal says, is this time different in crypto? I mean, it's a great question. The whole thing is different, right? So like these things right here, right? And that's the thing. People are finally understanding this is different. And we've been talking about it. It's like navigating uncharted waters. It's being through something we haven't been through before. And people are trying to create narratives, and it's so annoying. Oh, the Trump tariffs. And it's like, no, look, this has been a different cycle, right? We're having to kind of go through it with a thought process of being like, it's not an expansionary cycle, right? Everyone's used to expansions. That's why I've been so critical of the 4-year block reward having all that stuff. Like, no, this time is different, right? Is this going to be a rotational equity top rather than an expansionary top? Because everybody is used to, with their formulas, 3 times in a row, expansionary cycles. And that's not what this is, right? We're navigating it from a completely different context, right? And having to speculate, what does it mean, right? Do we end up having a rotational equity top happening in here? Because it's not an expansionary one, right? And so when you see breadth consolidate, like we've talked about, the topic of the last year and a half, breadth, right? Low breadth, an absence of breadth. That's not an expansion. And so you've seen people be real sarcastic and arrogant of stocks have been going up. It's like 7 stocks holding the whole thing all together. It hasn't been the whole market pulling it all together. And so this crypto tends to run when there's expansion or breadth opening throughout markets. And this is a really good indicator of breadth opening throughout markets. And we are obviously needing to see something like that come into play, likely for crypto to be able to do something. But even in the event of this, people are probably going to think that this is an expansion. And I'm still arguing that that wouldn't even be an expansion. That's still just kind of like the absolute euphoric, absolute last little touch of euphoria before things come to their end. And that the way to think about all this is like, this is like this is like April and May of Bitcoin of 2021. And this is like October and November of Bitcoin in 2021 as well. And that's the hypothesis and the theory that we're having to run with, because you can't apply whatever everybody the laziness of everything of everybody in the past with the 4-year block reward havings and all that stuff. I tried to do my best to dismiss it. I'm very critical of it. I'm almost a jackass about it, of how I don't believe in the 4-year block reward having. But that we're navigating a different cycle. We're navigating something the crypto market has never navigated before, ever. And that's why this is brought up on Markets in the Morning literally every week. So yeah, is this time different? For sure. Andy Philpott, and like the most amazing, thank God, just that XRP is above $2 during all of it. All of it. I can't believe it. Because, I mean, you look at some of these other charts, and it's just not the story, man. Annie Philpott had gifted one. Thank you so much. JJ Jacob. In a live stream September 11th, you talked about the possibility of a giant bubble in the stock market, Dow Jones 60K. Is that changed because of a rotational top? I don't know. In September, I wrote a big newsletter on it. I don't know. Maybe there's just like ideas throwing out there. I don't know. I'm not convinced on a Dow Jones target at all. Like, and I mean, I'm not even like, here's the problem with the Dow right now. Historically, when you start doing things like this, it typically marks the top of this move, right? When you start setting these lower lows, there's some instances where it doesn't. Then you kind of start getting into the questions of like what we had happen with gold. It was kind of like tricky of like, was it? Was it not it? Is there still another one that still ends up coming in here, right? Like what we saw. Right, with gold. Kind of gave some trickery in here, then it goes for another one, right? Typically, these are signs of it. So for me, it's more of like I'm looking for the rotational move to happen in the Dow or in the market, not so much caring of how high it's going to end up going. This is just the question, can we start the rotational stuff in here? And there's most times, like series of higher lows, right? Most times whenever you set a lower low, that tends to be some type of trend change. So it seems to be like there's the possibility that we could see it coming pretty soon. How high is it going to go? Like, man, I think we all know it's already exceeded even how high I thought it would go, right? I thought we would end up 4.236 extensioning. It's gone higher, right? Like it's a mega bubble. But what's amazing is that the Russell 2000 is like still right here. So I'm not sure how high the Dow will go. I'm not sure if the Dow will go even any higher than it already has. At all. It's just whether or not it's going to rotate. If there's going to be a breadth opening, right? But it's interesting. I have to go back to that from September 11th because I wrote a whole newsletter about this back in September, wasn't it? The rotational equity top. Tay Brown. Seems like the timeline may have extended to the fall. Have we ever seen an expansion during summer? Maybe sell at the end of May and wait until October, November. Historically, it's an accurate observation. Historically, summers don't tend to be anything too crazy. You can go back to 2017. There was some action that happened in the crypto market in 2017 and heading into June, right? So this is like all the way into June. It's not too late to count it out that, things could still happen in April and May and June. But typically after that, not a whole lot. When this whole run happened and this whole expansion and this alt season happened in the cryptocurrency market, this all happens in April, in May, in early June. And then it goes pretty stagnant after that. So we've definitely seen it like in 2018 and in 2017, where all the action really took place here in April, May, and June. And then you go back to 2021. What was it like? All the real action in the market happened there in, April and May, where Bitcoin kind of peaks out. The alt season happens there in May. So once you do get into like the June months, historically things get rough. And like in this example, the altcoin market still kept roaring up in here. However, XRP did actually stop over here in May, like in here. So like in mid-May, that's where the top of XRP comes in. I can add that on there so you can see it. You can see XRP's peak happens way over here on May 17th, whereas like Ethereum's is way over here in mid-June. There's like a month, almost a month between those. Mr. Shrivel, Tay Brown, thank you. So, but a lot of times, like these things can happen into the coming months. So I wouldn't rule it out in the coming months that it's still coming. Right? Time is so difficult to predict. I've said that a million times, but it just like you just looking at how his markets historical behave, it still doesn't really look like it can be completely ruled out happening. And these are typically the active months: April, May, and June. But typically July and August are not that great, right? We're all planning vacations. People step away. They go get away from the trading desks and don't care. They spend money, right? We can kind of go through these months not spending money. But then once it gets to summertime and stuff with kids and stuff, you want to do things. Mr. Snurvel, Elon has posted in 2020 and in 2022 about making the Roaring 20s happen again. What are your thoughts on us repeating that history? Right. So the Roaring 20s, like the Industrial Revolution, right? It's like it was such a big deal. Everybody had cars. That was like when cars were starting to become really popular, right? So I don't know what he means by that. If he's talking about like creating an asset bubble, or if he's talking about like just big changes happening in society, or if he's being like, let's make a blow off top in the equity markets, right? But you just look, we've talked about this before. It's like we've already had the Roaring 20s. That's what this whole thing has been. This is a massive asset bubble that has happened over here in the Dow Jones Industrial Average. It has exceeded the Roaring 20s. I've pulled this up many times in here before. I thought the Dow would have already stopped Like, this is your roaring 20s bubble. This is why it's hard for me to have a lot of, like, obviously I'm taking on the biggest risk in the world by being in the crypto market because it's like equities on steroids. But, you know, when it comes to this stuff, like, this is just how big that bubble is. This bubble is the size of the roaring 20s or bigger, depending on where you want to use your starting point at. This is a massive bubble in the Dow with no correction, no real one, right? And it will end that way. It will end in a big, giant kerplunk at the end of the day. They always do. Corey says, do you also have a more bearish scenario for XRP? See here, there's so many calls for like $1. Like, I don't see how you go to $1 without it being like super bearish. Like, it'd just be like game over. Like, I don't see that path to get there, right? So I wish people would explain their path of being like, no, it's real bullish. We go to $20 after we go to $1. I'm like, please show me that path. And then give me some example where that path has happened before, because I don't see it. I think the most bearish you could be and still be bullish long-term is $1.50. And the only way you could do it, I've got so much junk on here now. The longer we go into a live stream, the more things get out of whack here. But, you know, your only way is to argue that you have to back test this breakout, right? Which you have already done, right? You have already done here, right? Right. So it's already hit it. But the only way I can argue that you can get to like $1.50 is that if you're going to do it on the market cap, right? And that's about $1.50, right? Any arguments for $1, anything in that region, anything below $1.50, I need, if you're going to bring that, because people come in here and they make that argument here, and they've had it a couple of weeks ago. Like, tell me the path. Show me the path. Let me see it. Give me an example. No one's got it. The influencers don't got it. Nobody's got it. How do you get to $1 and how do you keep going? I don't see it. So like your most bearish scenario that I could see would be that if you had to touch that using the market cap, which is $1.50, right? But even then, like all the things we've talked about in today's video so far and live stream so far, I don't view it as probable. I think this is kind of our path right now. But that's as bearish as I could be. And if we go below $1.50 or something like that, I don't see the bull path at all. Euphoria, you know, that unfortunately euphoria happens on fake news, right? Which sucks. Right? But we typically see on fake news that's what's going to end up happening. Like I just showed with HBAR on their fake news. From a year ago, right? Head and Shoulders. I don't see the Head and Shoulders. Somebody show me Head and Shoulders. Right, so like people are probably saying this is a Head and Shoulders, right? Is that your Head and Shoulders? I don't know what your Head and Shoulder is, because what are we saying? This is our Head and Shoulders? Because that's what you got to say, or else you're just kind of drawing it the way you want to draw it. Dude, I love that I've figured this out. Oh, no. Come on. All right, we're okay. We're okay. We're okay. Right, so it's like saying this is the head and shoulders. Right? Whereas like this is more of a head and shoulders. Right? So the worst thing to bring to me is the head and shoulders, because you guys are going to find head and shoulders in every situation humanly possible, every single time. This is a head and shoulders. Bitcoin had, like this. This is head and shoulders. I don't view this as head and shoulders. I view this as being like we just talked about. Where is it? I lose everything. I can't. You're gonna have to go back with the whole Cardano thing, right? This is like May of 2021, like November of 2021, like thinking it in that mindset that this is where the majority of the market topped. All the calls for $1 are implying that you're right here. However, my argument is we're way beyond that. That the market peaked here, and your example there is like things with Cardano, and that you've already gone through that whole phase in there, and that you're way beyond that. And that this is consolidation, this is accumulation, this is all those things, and that this whole phase has already happened. And XRP was just stronger. And that's not a head and shoulders, but more like November of 2021, where Bitcoin and a couple of assets have more strength than 90% of the market. And that's the same thing that happens here, right? Most of the market peters out here in early December. XRP continues going on. And that we were kind of getting through these phases, and then we're just humming along, getting closer and closer. Right, and like that is like an expanded flat. Somebody just asked, like Macy ETH. Nicholas Chang, Weeloon. I see that unlike a few weeks ago when the market capitulated while your followers are still mostly optimistic, after the crash last weekend, even your followers are getting pretty capitulated. Good sign. Well, you have to, we got hammered with news last week. Yeah, you're right. And just like people yelling at Trump because they're saying Trump's making the market go down. When prices are down, people are yelling at me all the time. People are up. People are like, oh, man, love you. Prices are down. I hate you. Same thing's happening to Trump right now. I don't think Trump's to blame. And I'm not sitting here like kissing Trump's boots by any means. This has just been my thoughts of the market, of what it would end up happening with the market. The XRP community and the crypto community got sentiment ravished last week because prices pumped and dumped. And not only was it price problems that happened there, it happened based on just a plethora of things that sent endorphins flying, right? Like that day, that Sunday, it doesn't matter who you are, the endorphins were flying based on what happened that day, right? It was like just taking the biggest hit of drugs you had ever had, right? And then the drugs got taken away. And you got thrown in jail. And you crashed your car. That's like what happened, right? That's like how bad it was. Like you lost money, lost the thing. Nothing was good. Everything was bad. Right? And so everybody got whacked hard with that whole thing that happened there. And that's just going to destroy sentiment in general. Dennis Wayne, thank you very much. It's very generous of you, man. I appreciate it. So kind. He says, hey, thank you for keeping a level head in all of this craziness. What are your thoughts on the housing market? I don't have a strong opinion on the housing market. We're not in a circumstance of like we were in the past where like there's lots of risky mortgages out there and where like even for me, like even when I bought a house when I was young, I got to buy it with like only having to put earnest money down. I didn't have to put any like real down payment down. I think they like wrote a mortgage for me with like my debt to income ratio of the house being like 55% of my income. Like mortgages were just real risky back then. And so like when things started hitting the fan, it became, a cascading event of people not being able to afford their mortgage. Fortunately, I survived the housing market. But me and my girlfriend, which is my wife now, we didn't know how we were going to make it. And when I hear people tell stories of them and the struggles they went through during the great financial crisis, it resonates with me very deeply. It sparks an emotion. I remember seeing DAI get teared up of talking about it. That resonated very strong because I totally remember what it was like going through the great financial crisis. And when you watch your neighbors, you're living in a nice neighborhood. You think everything is good in your neighborhood, and your neighbors are well off, only to find out in the middle of your night, your neighbors brought a moving truck in, took everything out, took all the blinds out of their house, and walked away from the home. That was crazy. And a lot of you know what I'm talking about, but a lot of you don't. A lot of you, if you're under the age of like 35, you don't know what that's like. You got to just kind of be a kid, be in college or, be a teenager or even younger than that. You didn't really feel the impacts of what that was like. I don't think we're in that boat, right? Because mortgages were written much more responsibly. And so many people have so much equity in their home. So it's kind of propping the housing market up that people aren't desperate sellers, right? So typically you need unemployment to spike in order to create people say, I can't afford my home anymore. Then people get desperate to sell their home if they don't have any equity in the home. And we're just not like that, right? Like unemployment isn't like spiraling out of control and people have a lot of equity built up in their home. So it's just kind of stalled out, but interest rates are high. So nobody wants to buy and nobody wants to sell. So it's called just kind of like stalled out. So it feels like just something's going to have to shake the boat to cause something to happen. And I don't know what that's going to be. So those are my thoughts, right? I don't have any like golden forecast of it, but that's just the way I view it and look at it. And it seems like that. Like that's kind of been my view for a while, and prices have really just kind of been stuck. Something's going to have to rock the boat. But Dennis, thank you very much. YV writes, XRP USD is reacting to the 2017 bull market fibs on the weekly, like hitting resistance on December 2nd at the 786. Do you think it could expand to the 2.618 level on this fib? I'm not sure what your question is. Compared to 2017. We're talking about this. Not sure I follow you, brother. But the 2.618 of this fib. I mean, that's my general idea, right? Like, and I've got this whole thing of confluence on how I can point to this level and show this level. Like 2 weeks ago, I was like, we got content lined up for the week, but then everything has been chaotic all week, right? We haven't I haven't even acknowledged this is how fast things move. There's now a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Last time we got together with Last Markets in the morning, we didn't even have a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Now we do. And that's how fast things move. But I mean, that's the general idea, right? $8. That's really my main target. So, all right. There we go. All my charts are now slopped from everything that we've done on here, guys. So I think that's probably a perfect time. I'm all caught up in here. We're at an hour and 15 minutes. I appreciate all of you so much for being here and for tuning in. Hit the frog on one more way out on our Wednesday.
It is Wednesday, my dude. It is Wednesday, dudes.
All right. Happy Wednesday, everybody. You know, I used to be able to get to the weekend and things are chill. It's no longer like that. I'm talking to people and talking to my wife. It's like, I don't feel like there's been a day off from crypto in 2 months. Like, not a single day off. And prices are not going up. Like, if prices are going up, that's fine. When they're just chaotic and a washing machine, having a day off would be nice. It would be nice. So... Corey says, why will Ethereum be the biggest winner after White House Summit? I tweeted that out. I'll theorize on that really quick, and then we'll wrap it up in there on why Ethereum was the winner. You have to look at the players who are involved in that, right? And it's kind of like what I said earlier. Who really won throughout how it turned out in the end to be Bitcoin, right? Like Bitcoiners say Bitcoin won. Right. Okay. Price isn't reflecting that. And, you know, I was thinking about this too. All right. So I'm just going to go on a ramble here for a minute. No more super chats. No more super chats. We're done. The interesting things to think about, right? This is totally just thoughts from me. You know, when we play in the markets, right, we're taking on risk, right? And we do it based on like, you know, where is the risk? And if there's risk, you know, then there's more potential for a reward, right? Typically the crowd pours in when the risk is perceived to be very low. I'm going to get super rich and I'm not going to take on much risk. So I look to Bitcoin now and I think to myself, where's the risk? Like when I got in 2017, it was like, still hated by the media. It was like chastised, criminal, bad people in underground, drug money, Silk Road. Like these people are bad. These people are criminals. They're committing crimes. And to watch that evolve over all these years to now there's ETFs and there's the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. It's like, well, where's the risk now? Well, that's where we got to build these narratives, right? Hedge against inflation was one of the narratives. That doesn't work. Yeah, that narrative had to be cut, right? That was the 2021 narrative. That turned to every narrative built is just a lie, right? A store of value. Well, everything is a store of value. Right? It doesn't matter. Comic books are a store of value. You know, collectible video games are a store of value. Anything is a store of value. But where's the risk on it, right? And is that how it ends, right? Is that how we reach like the long-term top of Bitcoin? Is that we reach the end? It's never used as a peer-to-peer money. It's finally accepted by the government. It's accepted by the media. It's accepted by Wall Street. And that's the end. It's interesting to think about. Where's the risk, right? The risk was we're all going to get arrested. XRP, the risk still exists, right? You still have the SEC stuff, the appeal. You still have people fighting from within the industry. You don't have the ETFs yet, right? So there's still the risk there. Will you get the ETF? It's unknown. Will the appeal get dropped and like they're gonna completely leave XRP alone? I don't know. There's still the risk there. Will Swift use XRP? You don't know, right? Risk is still there. So there's the risk, right? And that's the reality as investors. What we do is search for risk and believe that the risk is going to work out. And the higher the risk, right, the hopefully potentially higher rewards. And that's why people love meme coins too, right? They're the riskiest thing in the universe, but they also produce like the highest rewards if it pans out. But their risk is insane. So for Bitcoin, I look at it and where is the risk? Anyway, one of the risks that Ethereum was facing, to go back and answer your question, is just the whole thing on Made in America, right? All this Made in America talk and rhetoric from Trump and let's be real, like Cardano, XRP, Solana, these are all the Made America stuff, right? That was the threat that there would be something like that created and that there would be favoritism shown to Made in America, right? And if that was true, that was a threat. It was a threat to Ethereum. Then when Trump comes out and announces that, major threat. So there's all the speculation and worry that there's going to be a lot of favoritism showed to Made in America coins. Then Trump does it. Oh no, it's going to happen. It's going to be Made in America coins that are shown favoritism and get a crypto reserve. Bad for Ethereum, right? So for months leading up to it, that had been the worry that would happen. Then it came out that it was going to happen, right? And that, XRP, Solana, of course, Solana and Ethereum been back and forth on their who's going to be the big winner. And, Cardano, just like everybody counts them out, right? And XRP, all right? Don't got to get into all that. But there we go. The winners are going to be XRP, Ethereum, XRP, Cardano, and Solana, not Ethereum. And then, of course, the second post comes out hours later and says, well, of course, I love Bitcoin and I love Ethereum. But, there would still be a big problem there with Ethereum being such a massive asset in the market that Cardano and Solana and XRP get favoritism too, right? So sure, Ethereum gets the favoritism, but Ethereum already has most of the market share. Do they really want to split that with XRP, Solana, and Cardano? Or would Ethereum be better off if there was no such thing as Made in America? And there was that whole idea was just completely axed. And it was just Bitcoin. Because if it's just Bitcoin, then it still provides the legitimacy to the space and to crypto. But it also doesn't provide that competitive advantage for Made in America and the other coins that people hate these. Like Gemini, they hate Cardano, right? So you had the Winklevoss twins come out and tweet that, no, it should only be Bitcoin. You had Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, come out and tweet, nope, it should only be Bitcoin, right? What interest does Brian Armstrong have? Well, they're huge into Ethereum. They've got the base layer, right? Coinbase's base. They're heavily involved in Ethereum. They don't want there to be an advantage given to XRP, Solana, and Cardano as well. Now remember that they've smushed XRP and Cardano for a long time too. They didn't let Cardano onto Coinbase until almost the top was in. They got forced. And to this day, Gemini still has not listed Cardano. They were probably in the ear of David Sachs when you go back and you watch that Trump meeting, the White House Crypto Summit, David Sachs calls on the Winklevoss twins to speak. Brian Armstrong was sat at the head of the table next to David Sachs. And I think there was probably, people say it was the Bitcoin maxis that got to him. I'm going to guess it was actually Brian Armstrong and the Winklevoss twins who probably were screaming, if these altcoins get into a strategic crypto reserve, it's going to provide a competitive disadvantage to the rest of the market, and that they have their own self-interests involved, and that would have hurt their self-interests of what they're working on and what they're doing. And even if Ethereum was included in it, they wanted to squash the Made in America stuff. And so I think Ethereum is the one who dodged a bullet. I think Ethereum dodged a massive bullet by killing it off. And I think it was the people closest to David Sachs. It was probably Brian Armstrong and the Winklevoss twins who made it happen. That's my theory. And that'll do it. And I don't think it had anything to do with Bitcoin. I think that's why it happened. I think Ethereum, and so you say Ethereum is the biggest winner. I think Ethereum dodged a bullet. I think Ethereum was big trouble. And I think it dodged a bullet. Big time. A lot of the risks that were there for Made in America and the announcement that Trump made, Ethereum dodged a bullet. Big time. So, all right. That is it, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Thank you all so much for tuning. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm wrapping it up. If you could, please hit the like button on your way out the door. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.